Hey there, my name is Ross Walters, and I'm one of the founders of Valor Coffee. Today, we are talking about getting your coffee cart business off the ground. And I think no matter if you're in the early planning phases or you've been running coffee carts for years, this will be helpful for you. We started back in 2016 as a coffee cart, and we were 19 years old and had absolutely no business experience. And so over the years, we've just learned trial by fire, trial and error, you name it, we've tried it. And we found a few things that have actually helped our catering business become a sustainable, healthy piece of our business. So we'll talk about the amount of time it takes to start one of these businesses. We'll talk about the legal and business setup necessary, like starting an LLC. We'll talk about the health department, our favorite topic. We'll talk about how to market your coffee cart and actually get found and book events. We'll talk about how to staff your coffee cart, the right equipment to buy, operations and systems. So be sure to listen to everything, take notes if it helps you, and let's lock in. So first thing to talk about is actually you. It's not coffee carts. How are you spending your time in your life, and how much time are you willing to give to this business? Because if this is just a side hustle, you're going to treat it differently than you would if it was a full-on, like full-time jumping into this, going full in type thing. So when we started in 2016, we were 19 years old. We did have other jobs, but our plan A with our lives was we are going to turn Valor into our full-time careers. And so we acted accordingly. Every spare moment we had to work on our business, we took it. And even though a lot of our business was just in our heads at that point, we didn't buy anything yet. We didn't file an LLC. We were planning and ideating on what this business could become and what we wanted to be known for, what strategy we wanted to take. And so we just decided, let's start with a coffee cart because it's a lower barrier of entry. And that's why many people start as coffee carts instead of coffee shops, is because the financial barrier for entry is much lower. You can maybe pull off a coffee cart for $7,000 to $20,000, as opposed to a full-on coffee shop is probably closer to $100,000. But what most people don't realize is that the most valuable resource you have is your time. And so if you're not ready to commit a good bit of time towards this business, then it's just not going to grow to the rate that you maybe want it to. So it's time to get realistic on, okay, am I expecting this to be like a 2-year process or like a 6-month process to actually get leads for your catering operation and start booking events? There's a couple different ways you can approach having a coffee cart. Really, the two main ways to look at it are vending versus catering. So vending would be like you're at a farmer's market or you're in some place of business and you're actually selling cups of coffee or whatever your product is. Maybe you're at a food truck alley and you're selling direct to the consumer. The second one is catering. And so that would be more like private events, weddings, corporate events, that kind of thing. You're getting paid ahead of time as opposed to just per drink. And you're coming to an event and offering an open bar service, unlimited service for an agreed upon time. The way that you approach those two options is going to be different. And this is why I think it's so important to define your vision. In our company, we define our vision as like, what are we in motion towards? What's our goal? I remember when we started back in 2016, our whole goal was we wanted to have a coffee shop. And so we viewed our cart as a means to get to opening a coffee shop. So we actually chose the vending route a little bit more because our thought was if we can have pop-ups in the same city that our coffee shop would be in one day, then we would start to develop more of a presence in that community and start to get regulars and get our name out there and meet people in the community. You're still going to do that with catering, but I think it's a little bit more potent to go with a vending route because you're kind of acting like a coffee shop because you're selling drinks, but you're going to need another source of income in your life because vending events, like doing a farmer's market, you're really not going to be hitting high levels of revenue. But if your goal is to open a coffee shop, you're going to be developing regulars in that area. So that's vending. The catering side of things can be a lot more of a profitable business because you got to think, if you're charging $1,000 to come to someone's corporate office and serve their staff of 75 people for 2 hours, your cost of goods is going to be pretty low. if it's you starting the business and you're putting all the money back into the business, your labor percentage is going to be zero, because I think it is wise to put the money back into the business in the beginning if you can. And it's a lot more of a profit heavy model, but it all depends on your vision. Where do you want to be? You don't have to have your full 5-year plan mapped out, but it is important to just kind of pick a direction and go towards it, because the way you market a vending pop-up is going to be different than the way you market a catering service. And we'll definitely come back to that a little bit later, but I would just get real with yourself and whoever you're working with. Maybe it's your spouse or business partner or whoever it is. How much time and effort are you willing to commit to this business? And how many hours per week could you put towards it? And I think that will help clarify your vision. So for example, I was just talking to someone who is in the corporate world. They have a Monday to Friday job. They like their job. It pays their bills. Their spouse also works, and they wanted to start a coffee cart to mainly just do events on the weekends. And I look at that and I say, okay, if you're trying to build a catering business that books weddings on the weekends or books events on the weekends, or maybe you do farmers market, you're going to need to have a website that gets you found, right? But a lot of the people that are going to find you have their events during the week. And so if you're working your job that you don't want to quit because it pays your bills and you like it, then how are you going to be able to say yes to those events during the week? All of that is sort of clarified by what role is this business playing in my life? So I'd say that is the first lesson. How do you spend your time? What are you pointed towards? Would you like to go for the catering route or the vending route? Is this to open a coffee shop or is it to open a catering business? Because answering those questions are going to help you answer the rest of the questions that we'll talk about in the rest of this course.
When we were first starting our company, the thing I was hungry for the most was to be able to talk to other coffee professionals who were also starting coffee companies, compare notes, and see how many problems we had in common with other people. We have created a place to do that. It is called the Valor Coffee Community. Join the Valor Coffee Community by hitting the top link in the description of this video, and you'll go to a land of opportunity, courses, resources, connection with other coffee professionals. I'll see you there.
Okay, so next are the super businessy, governmenty type stuff that you need to start considering when you're starting a coffee cart business. The legal side of things, the health department, let's get into that. So you can start by forming an LLC on LegalZoom.com. That is the easiest, fastest way. You don't have to go anywhere. It's easy just to go to that website and file for an LLC. And, this is not legal advice, but getting an LLC allows you to have a separate entity from yourself, which is your business. And that's great for liability reasons, legal reasons. It's important to get that done. And then your business bank account is key because for tax reasons, and also, again, just to have a separate entity from your own personal bank account is huge. Buying all of your equipment through that bank account. You can get a credit card. We went the route of getting a 0% interest credit card. I think it was 0% interest for the first 12 or 18 months. And our thought was, we're going to load up this credit card to pay for all of our catering gear. And if we can't pay off this credit card before the interest kicks in, then we're just not going to do this business. So that was kind of a good motivation for us. And we ended up doing it. We maxed out our credit card with a GS3 and a grinder and our cart gear. And then we actually ended up paying it off through revenue from the catering cart. So that was great. We also went the crowdfunding route. We did a Kickstarter, and that was a good way to involve the people in our lives and helping get our business off the ground. So back in 2016 when we started, that's the route we took. Now for the health department. This is one of the biggest stumbling blocks and head scratchers of starting a coffee cart, because health department regulations are different in each county, let alone each state. And so by and large, from our experience, starting a coffee cart and also helping a bunch of people start coffee carts across the country, what you need to start is a base of operations. And so there's a few different ways you can do that. Many people start coffee carts because of the low financial risk up front. And so they can't justify, understandably, getting a full commercial kitchen and a full warehouse where they take their cart back to after each event and store their cart. But ideally, from the health department standpoint or the Department of Ag standpoint, that's what you need. You need a full commercial kitchen, non-porous surfaces, 3-comp sink, hand sink, mop sink. There's a bunch of different regulations that's probably different for each county. So I would recommend just checking out the literature from the health department in your county, in your city, and seeing what they require. The hard thing about that, though, is at least when we started, and I know that this how it is now in our area, is because coffee carts aren't that prevalent, there isn't exact verbiage in their literature that says, okay, for coffee carts, you need to do this, 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 and this. It's more like in their literature, it's like food trucks, or oddly, it was like a hot dog cart is what was in their literature. So I don't know how hot dog carts are more prevalent than coffee carts, but that's how it was. But there's a few different ways you can have a base of operations. Like I said, having a commercial kitchen if you have the liquid for that, or there are commissary kitchens that you can rent. I know one of our wholesale partners does that. They rent a space that, they cover that with the revenue from their cart, and that can give you access to a commercial kitchen. Or the route we took, as 19-year-olds with absolutely no budget, we had a friend who ran a catering company, like a food catering, not coffee catering. And she had a commercial kitchen, and she let us use hers. And so if you have anyone in your area that that has a commercial kitchen personally, then you can get in contact with them and sort of talk to your health department about how to get all of that legit. But at the end of the day, there isn't going to be a health department inspector walking around with a clipboard at a private event that you're catering. So if you don't have everything perfect, it's like you are just sort of risking it going wrong. So some people like to play it fast and loose. I wouldn't recommend that because you are investing money into this, and it all could sort of shut down if you're not playing it right. The more vending you do, I will say, the more risky it is to play it fast and loose with the health department, because at a farmer's market, there are more food service like temporary food service establishments there where they're, selling different kinds of grilled food or, whatever you would see at a farmer's market. And so there could be government officials there. I can remember, I don't recommend this, but I do think this story is helpful for people. When we started as a catering operation at Valor, and then we turned into a daily pop-up in the back of a co-working space in Alpharetta, the city that we're in now. And I remember my two business partners, Riley and Ethan, were off in Charleston learning how to roast coffee. And so I was left all alone at the cart for a few days to manage the business and make drinks for people. We were still open. And I remember a government official from the city walked into our cart, and he was kind of wearing like an official polo shirt with Alpharetta. And I was like, ooh, oh no, I hope we have all of our licensing in order. And so he was like, hey, where's your licensing for this business? And I start my stomach kind of drops a little bit because I'm like, are we about to get shut down? And I start fumbling under the cart for a folder where we had, our catering license, and it was our catering license was in a different city. So we weren't fully licensed for Alpharetta, but we didn't know that. And so he was like, I know you don't have licensing. Let's talk about it. And thankfully, he was really nice, and he was kind of on our side, which went such a long way. So for a second, we thought we were going to have to shut down, but we told him that, hey, we're doing a pop-up in this co-working space, and we really believe in this city. We have plans to open a coffee shop here. Can we have a variance in the rules? And so through a relationship with him and just kind of making friends with him and just kind of being on his side as far as growing the city and being a part of that growth, we kind of were able to bend the rules together, and it ended up being okay. And we ended up opening a coffee shop in that city. And so there's ways around it, but the main hurdle is, understandably, you're starting a coffee cart because it's a low barrier of entry financially, but opening a full commercial kitchen doesn't really make sense to have your base of operations. So best bet, once again, is to look at the health department literature, talk to local officials, and just see how much of your startup costs could go towards something like that. Renting may be an option. Talking to a friend that that has a commercial kitchen is an option, but it's definitely important to be able to sleep at night knowing that your business is certified for the health department and you have an LLC and you're protected in those ways. All right, so next we're going to talk about the fun stuff. It's buying your equipment. Fun, but also kind of daunting because these are big purchases. We'll start with the most obvious one, and that's the cart itself. So over the years, we've had a couple different iterations of our operation, and the one that we currently have is my favorite because it's the easiest to use, and that we'll come back to that a little bit later, but that is a huge part of actually scaling a catering operation, that it's easy to use when you book an event. We started off building our own cart, and so it was this big old behemoth wooden cart, super heavy. It looked great, but that's how we did it. We transported it with a trailer. And for a while that worked. We later upgraded to a metal cart. I think it was made of aluminum. And that totally works while you're at the event. But the hard part is the load in and the load out, because if you have to have a trailer, that means you have to have a truck to pull the trailer, which means that whoever is working an event needs to know how to drive a truck and trailer and back a trailer. Storing a trailer is difficult sometimes. The cart is heavy. And so while it's convenient to kind of think that, oh, whenever we do an event, all we have to do is just roll that cart out of the trailer and it's fully outfitted with all of our gear. It's a lot of work and it's kind of a hassle. And so we've since moved to Simple Carts, and we're not partnered with Simple Cart in any way. So this is completely unbiased. They have an awesome product. What they do is they make these panels that lock together that make it really easy for your load in, because you don't need a trailer. You don't have to wheel the cart into a trailer and unload it. You can keep all of the panels just in your car even. I've seen it fit in sedans. Definitely an SUV would be a little bit easier. The reason why that's so great is because anyone can work an event. It doesn't matter if you're 5'2" and weigh 120 pounds and you've never lifted a weight in your life, or if you're super jacked, like anyone can work an event because you don't have to rely on pushing this super heavy cart up a hill. It's a lot less likely to break too. I can remember so many horror stories of us using our wooden cart where one of the wheels falls off or the counter breaks or whatever it is. You kind of avoid all of that. And so I'd recommend Simple Carts. They also have this really awesome system called a Simple Hub, and it has all of your plumbing just into one little box where you can plug in your cords. The power is really easy to use. It's just a power strip. You plug in all of your gear to that, and you only need one circuit to operate your equipment instead of two. So I'd really recommend starting with that, or you can build your own. I've seen a lot of people just kind of like use that same concept that Simple Cart uses, which is it all locks together. So I've seen people make their own panels, and they have a lot of good success with that. That's obviously a cheaper way to go. And then we'll move to the espresso machine. We use La Marzocco GS3s on our carts, and they're just super solid. And the biggest thing with an espresso machine is the steam boiler going to keep up when you have high volume? Because if you have a line of people at a wedding and it's cold outside, let's say, and they're all ordering cappuccinos, that steam boiler is going to start to lag. And then all of a sudden you can't really serve drinks because you can't steam milk. So that's important. Linea Mini is another really good recommendation. And then a cheaper option is the Luca A53. All of these gear related topics are on a really good video that we made a while back where we talk about all of our preferred brands for our coffee cart. So I definitely check that out on our YouTube. So we've talked about espresso machine, the cart, and then, from there it's the grinder. Malkonig is a great brand. We use a Eureka grinder. But the key with the grinder, and really with all of this, is you want it to be as lightweight as possible because you want to be able to scale this operation. So if you're buying, a big old Malkonig E80, that's going to be great for volume and great for dialing in, but it's like $3,000-ish and it's super heavy, it's really not going to be scalable or sustainable for you long term. And so buying something maybe closer to that 1,000, 1,500 range is probably going to be your best bet with a grinder. It'll be lighter, and if you break it, it's not going to be a $3,000 mistake. And that's key. You're lugging all this expensive equipment around all over your area, and so it just has a higher likelihood of it breaking than it would if it was just in a static environment such as a cafe. From there, you're kind of just looking at accessories. And, I'm sure if you do research there, finding accessories should be pretty easy. We have a full list of our preferred brands, like I said, on our online community, which is linked below in this video. When we first started, we thought it'd be a good idea to offer drip coffee. Drip coffee is difficult because sometimes it really hits and a lot of people want drip, and it's a good way to work through the line because it's so easy just to pour a cup of drip coffee. We even went as far as to plumb in a Curtis drip brewer in our first cart so we could brew drip as the event was going. And while that was good from a quality standpoint because the drip was really fresh, there were so many events where we just brewed all this drip and no one ordered it. I think when people book an espresso cart, they're looking to get espresso drinks. They're looking to get lattes and cappuccinos. And so going through all that trouble just to have a drip machine, I think is not worth it. And we don't serve drip on our cart anymore. If somebody wants a drip, we just tell them we can make them an Americano. And while I get it, an Americano is not the same as a cup of drip through a paper filter. We've just found that as the best way to serve our clients as a whole, is to keep our operation as simple as possible so that we can make it as excellent as possible and be able to continue to do this for as long as possible. That's an overview of equipment. Let's move on to marketing.
Hey, if you are getting value out of this content, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. We post weekly content that is meant to unite and elevate people in the coffee industry. All right, back to it.
All right, so next we'll talk about how to actually get found in your business. And when you have a coffee shop, the way to get found is through your Instagram and having a good location and making sure you're on Google Maps. With catering, it's different because you don't actually have a storefront. And just to dispel this myth once and for all, a lot of people may think like, oh, if you have a coffee shop where you have tons of people walking through your door every day and you put out flyers about your catering operation, you're going to get tons of leads because the people love your brand and they're coming into your coffee shop and they'll fill out the form and you'll get lots of bookings. That's at least what I thought. But it's not true. We put flyers in both of our very busy coffee shops about our coffee cart. And I'm telling you, we did not get any leads from that. And I think it was a pretty good flyer. And so from talking to people who actually run good catering businesses, what I learned is the main way to get found is through SEO. And if you've listened to our podcast at all, you've heard us talk about this, but SEO is search engine optimization. And what that just means is when people search coffee catering near me, or they search coffee cart near me, or coffee cart enter your city, you want to be at the top of that list when the search results come up. And more specifically, if you can have the ad, everyone hates ads, I get that. But if you pay for an ad and you're on the ad read, and you also have the number one place for organic SEO, so you're the number one result, and then you also have a Google My Business profile that is your catering operation with a bunch of reviews, that's 3 touch points for a brand new lead to look at and click on and go to your website. So investing in SEO is huge. Many people vaguely know what SEO is. You have your keywords, and maybe some of you know what H1s are. H1 is just like the heading on your website. What is that heading? Google reads your website and finds the keywords that will match with a search that a potential client would search on Google. And so you can set up your website for SEO. You could go on ChatGPT or Google and ask like, okay, I'm starting a catering operation for coffee cart catering. How would I set up my website to maximize SEO, and just go with that? You could do that. Or you could do what we did and hire an SEO agency. So we've worked with Local Eyes in the past. We actually have an exclusive deal with them where you get discounted pricing on their services through the podcast. So go to localizegrowth.com/Valor to check out what they have. You can book a call with them and just ask them, like, in my city, what's my current competition like? They'll be able to tell you all that and give you a really clear plan. And as of the recording of this video, they're offering a website Kickstarter package. So they'll build your landing page and make sure it's great for SEO. And they'll build in flash quotes into your page. Now, what is flash quotes? Flash quotes, like I already said, is a program that all starts with a little form on your website that is embedded into your catering page. And the form just very basically is designed to get a lead to fill it out so that you have their contact information and then you can sell to them. So they have instant quoting, which allows you to type in all of your own pricing, and based on how many guests that the client adds and how many hours of service and where the address is of the service site. Thank you. Depending on where that is, it'll give them a price, or you can custom quote them if you're not comfortable with your pricing yet. This is huge. The founder of Flash Quotes, his name is Justin. One of the things he taught me is that the sole purpose of your website should be to get someone to fill out the form. And that's a very specific outcome you're looking for. It's not even necessary. The goal of your website isn't even necessarily to communicate your mission, vision, or values, or your brand, or how cool your cart is, or whatever. All of those things are pointed towards someone filling out your form on your website, because that's the only way you're going to be able to book an event, is to actually get in contact with people that want to book events. And so using an SEO agency and using Flash Quotes are just going to be huge, huge foundations for your catering operation to actually get it off the ground. I seriously wish these things existed. SEO obviously existed back when we started, but Flash Quotes didn't. I wish we would have used these things when we started, because we could have actually had a legit catering operation sooner. But a word of caution for that, and this kind of goes back to the first thing we talked about, which is how much time do you have to dedicate towards this business? Because if you start ranking number one in SEO and you embed Flash Quotes into your website, I guarantee you are going to start to get leads, and you need to be able to have a quick response time with those leads. If you're having leads come into your inbox and you're not responding to them until 3 or 5 or 14 days later, then they're just simply not going to book with you. Maybe rarely they will, but the response time for your leads is a key indicator of the likelihood of them actually working with you. So if you're working another full-time job and you're also trying to manage leads, it's probably not the most sustainable way to go about it. And if you start employing these things I'm saying with investing in SEO and you start booking events, then you got to figure out like who's going to work these events if I'm working this other job. So that's why I always start this conversation with what role is this business playing in your life and how much time do you have to dedicate towards it? So just a word of caution, if you employ these things, you're going to get leads and you're going to book events. So make sure you actually have the time and people to actually perform the event. And last thing I would say when it comes to software or tools that you can use here, and we talked about SEO so far, Flash Quotes. The third thing I would say is a CRM, customer relationship manager. And what that is just a database of everyone who has ever reached out to you, all of their contact information, personal little notes about them. If you want help remembering what someone's wife's name is, so that's in your brain, you're going to be talking to a lot of different people. So to actually have a database to store all that information is huge. I use Close CRM, CLOSE, Close CRM. And I love it because you can set up a phone number that is not your personal phone number. So you have like an alternate phone number just for your business, and you can actually text and call from that phone number, and it records all of your conversations and puts it all into a log. I'm telling you, these three tools, a CRM, Flash Quotes, and SEO, those are like the things that make you legit. Those are the tools that will allow someone to find you, because you don't have a storefront. So your website and your online presence is your storefront. I wouldn't focus as much on Instagram, because whenever people are scrolling Instagram, they're much lower intent. This is another thing that Justin from Flash Quotes taught me. When people search coffee catering near me, they are actively looking for someone for a specific need that they have, right? They have an event in mind. They're trying to find someone. That's a high intent buyer. As opposed to on Instagram, someone's just passively scrolling and they're just like, oh, cool, an ad of a coffee cart. All right, nice. All right, whatever. Next thought. And then maybe there's a small percentage of people that are like, oh, wow, I'll keep that in mind for my event. And then they actually go on and book you. But I would focus a lot more on your website and SEO than I would Instagram. So these are just a few things to actually pour some fuel on the fire, and let's get that cart actually working some events. Okay, so let's say you have your cart, you have an online presence, and you're ready to actually start operating and booking events. I want to talk to you about the 3 Ps, okay? Buckle in. So people, process, preparation. So these are the 3 things that you need to actually run your business. So let's start with people. Who are the people that are actually going to work these events, and who are the people that are actually going to talk to these clients, plan the events, do all the booking, handle all the logistics. Thinking through that is going to save you a lot of heartache. And if it's just you, or if it's just you and your business partner, you'll probably wear all of those hats, and that's okay. But it is important to just clearly list out, like, what are all of the responsibilities involved in this business and which one of us does which one. Maybe both of us do a little bit of both, but it's so important to say, all right, you're in charge of this, I'm in charge of that. So basic, but I'm just telling you things that we didn't think about when we started. If you have a full-time job and you're wanting to start a coffee cart to run during the week while you're working, you need to have people ready to work those events, right? But I'm just going to take a wild guess and say you're not in the coffee industry, so you don't know a ton of competent baristas to work your events. So what do? This is just a strategy that I would recommend. Go to the 3 nicest coffee shops in your area and become a regular at all 3. And what you can do is just start to talk to some of the baristas there and just ask them, like, would you ever be interested in working some of my events? I'm starting a coffee cart business. I need help during the week. I'm not trying to steal you from the place you're working at. Wouldn't want to do that. But if you ever have a free day, would you ever want to work? That is going to serve you so well, because if you're having leads come in that you can't work because you're working your other job, then your business will stall. And the way that we pay our people, we pay per hour, but we have the advantage of having an entire bank of baristas from our 2 cafes and our roastery. And so we've built out a team with a whole bunch of people that already work for us that we can just call on and pay them an hourly rate plus tips. If you're just starting off, you don't really have that advantage. So I would maybe recommend paying a higher day rate for someone's time. That way it's worth their while. If they've worked 5 days a week at their coffee shop job, you have to give them an incentive to work that 6th day. Maybe you pay them $250, $300 for an event, especially. And this goes back to an earlier point of making sure that your operation is easy to use, especially if they can work that event alone. You would want to train them to get them to the point where they can work the event alone. But if they're working it alone and you're paying them $300 and you're making $1,000 from the event, that's still a pretty good labor percentage. But if you have an operation that's hard to use and you always need 2 people at the event, then you're out $600. That's a much worse labor percentage from your $1,000 top line revenue from that event. And so if you can get to know maybe 3 to 5, 4 to 6 baristas that can just kind of be on call for you, and you're doing a really good job of letting them know in as much advance as you can for upcoming events, and you tell them, hey, we got an event this day, would you want to work it? They can ask off work, or they can work the event if they're not working at their other cafe. You can pay them well and start to build your roster of baristas. So that's people. Process. People, process, preparation. So let's talk about process. You really need a system for how the day works when you're working an event. So the very first thing that someone does when they work an event, what do? Is there a checklist for that? They come into your space. If you have a warehouse, what do? First, they make sure that they pack up all of the materials used for the event. They have a checklist so they don't forget anything. These are all just such basic common sense things to say. But if you don't have a checklist for your events so that you don't forget anything, then you absolutely will forget things, especially if it's a team member working the event and it's not you. So it's all just about like avoiding the dynamic where as the business owner, you're like, okay, I know how to work this well. It's all in my brain. I can do an event. That's great, but you need to be able to translate that to a team of people. So having checklists is really huge for that. And then having a process too for your drinks. For us, a saving grace on our cart was doing split shot drinks. So, when you pull a shot of espresso, it comes out the 2 spouts. You catch those 2 shots in 2 separate cups. And then, you have about an ounce to work with in each drink. And so instead of a full double shot going in a latte, we use a single shot. And so we serve 8-ounce drinks at catering events. Now you may think, isn't someone going to think that's a really small drink? Aren't they going to want a 12 or a 16-ounce drink? And I would just say, man, in my experience, It's been fine. It's been great. I've never heard anyone say, oh man, I'm getting this coffee for free and my boss paid for it. I wish it was bigger. Never heard that. So serving 8-ounce drinks is a saving grace. And that's just an example of a process that we've implemented in our operation that makes it easy for our staff to actually operate the thing. And what that does for your steam wand is it preserves the life of your steam boiler. Because if you're constantly just steaming 16-ounce or 12-ounce lattes back to back, your little one group espresso machine is just not going to be able to keep up with that. So people, process, and then preparation. What I would say with preparation is the way you store your cart matters. And the way that you prep for the event matters. If you're a business owner, and let's just say it's you working the event the next day, it is just absolutely invaluable, especially if you have an early event, to have been fully prepped the night before. So all of your syrups, all of your milk, all of your ice, all of that is ready to go. That way, all you have to do on the day of the event is just load everything into the car and go. I can remember a phase in our catering operation where it was starting to grow. We were starting to get traction, but we had that metal cart I was talking about earlier, and we didn't have any of the processes and preparation that we have now. And so every time we would book an event, I would kind of be like equal parts excited that we booked an event, but also kind of sad because I knew that our operation was so disorganized and it was going to take so much effort to actually work the event. You don't want to feel that way. You want to feel like it's as easy as possible so that you can continue to do this for as long as possible. People, process, preparation. So I'll include this in here as a bonus and an outro. If you're one of these people that are starting a coffee cart with no barista experience, one thing I would recommend is setting up in a relatively low risk area, like maybe even your own house or someone else's house, maybe someone else's business, and have a day where you serve drinks for free to your friends and family. This is going to help you for so many reasons. I remember when we were in that phase where we had some barista skills, but they didn't necessarily apply one-to-one to our coffee cart. Giving away drinks for free was just so invaluable for us learning our bar flow and being as comfortable as possible behind our cart. One thing we talk about in Valor is as baristas and as coffee shop owners and coffee cart runners, we want to feel like we are hosting people in our space, just like we're hosting a guest in our home. And so if you were hosting someone in your home and you didn't know where your knives were, or you didn't know if you had enough food to feed everybody, then you wouldn't be a very good host because you're not able to serve the people that have come into your home. And when you're standing behind that coffee cart, you want to feel like you know everything there is to know about that operation. You want to feel as comfortable as possible with your skills behind that bar so that you can focus on making great drinks for people, but also connecting with them socially, because that's such a huge part of a coffee cart, is bringing hospitality into someone else's space. So in closing, over the years, we have seen that coffee carts really can be a viable business. And especially if you're going towards corporate clients and private events and weddings, they can actually be a high profit business. But employing the things that I've talked about in this course, they're really going to give you such a head start that we didn't have when we started. So thanks so much for listening today. And I hope this helps you in your journey in starting a coffee cart.